Well, I'm going to start by kind of reading off your uh, credentials because I'm super impressed, and I want to make sure everybody that listens to the call understands where you're coming from and your experience in the field. So, you're the principal of Affordable Medicare Solutions out in Georgia. You're a native there, right outside of Atlanta, right?
That's correct.
Awesome. You also have health and Medicare sales and education um, that you give to professionals, which I love. I know that you are a noted leader in your community. I was reading your bio where it talked about how within public art and city planning initiatives, you've also served on a couple of boards and leadership committees. I know you're the president of one council. And in 95, you opened your first agency, right?
That's basically this agency. Yes, we're our 30th year. We've had some name changes, but it's the same agency for 30 years. Yeah.
That is so impressive. I mean, with the fluctuations and all the market and what Medicare specifically has done, that's incredible. And I know you now have 10 licensed professionals on your team with over 100 years of combined medical and healthcare, Medicare and medical insurance experience, which is
That's correct.
phenomenal. Now, with the changes in Medicare and health due to the Affordable Care Act, I know you in your bio said that you continued your trend-setting approach to educating the public on their new healthcare and Medicare options, as well as agents, which I love. So you now teach an impressive Medicare course out in Georgia, over 1,500 classes, it sounds like, to
Mhm.
both professionals and even consumers at conventions, senior living facilities, hospitals, churches. So AMS, which is Affordable Medicare Solutions, has a comprehensive YouTube learning channel covering all
Yes,
things
that's right.
Medicare. Is that right?
Mhm.
That's phenomenal. I want to get into that just a little bit later in the call. But you are one of the most, or maybe the most awarded Medicare agency in Georgia, receiving
Yeah.
awards for both sales and persistency
Mhm.
and other leadership things, which is amazing. Both with the carriers, I guess. I guess the carriers primarily is where you're receiving a lot of those awards.
There's also the best of Atlanta, best of Georgia, best of Gwinnett. There's
Wow.
and then we have over 700 five-star Google and Facebook reviews, which we're hoping to get to 1,000 this year. So
Let's go.
yeah,
I love it.
there's a big emphasis here about brand and reputation management.
That's phenomenal. I see all your awards behind you. You'll need a second bookshelf here soon, Keith, to fill up. The main reason we're here today, though, is to talk about buying and selling agencies. You're obviously an expert in the field because I know when we were messaging back and forth, you said you had done 10 deals in the last 12 years.
Mhm.
Now, do you mean specifically purchasing those books of business and acquiring them into your current book, or did you help facilitate these
No, no,
deals?
no, no. So we literally purchased nine, and one of them we did was a tax-free transfer where with a large agency that was focused on group health. I had some group like bunch of group policies, maybe 50 or 60 different groups that I had. I did not want to be in the group space anymore, so I did a tax-free exchange with them where I gave them the groups. They gave me all their individual health and Medicare. I actually took one of their
Oh,
employees and brought him over here. That didn't work out, but it was part of the transaction where I would hire this employee that was managing those blocks. And but all the rest of them were true purchases where we actually purchased other agencies and integrated them in here. But
wow.
yeah, I'm willing to get creative. If somebody wants to do a tax-free exchange, I'm all ears,
Well, see, and that's probably why you've been successful because you think outside the box and you find these funding solutions. That's one of my big questions that I know other agents were wondering too, is we'll kind of hop around here. I have a list of questions, but since I mentioned that and you've kind of alluded to that, the funding behind these purchases and these deals seems like it could be difficult because they're looking at a lot of different metrics. But in general, is it something that's hard to get, or do you have to get creative with most deals?
Well, I'll tell you, everybody needs to get creative. So, I know agents that have used home equity lines of credit. You've got an extra couple $100,000 value in the growth of your home. It's not
Mm-hmm.
doing anything for you. Why not? You don't have to go to a bank and tell them why you're using your home equity line.
Right.
Now, of course, writing it off on your taxes is you need to talk to your
Different
CPA about
story.
that because home equity lines are supposed to be for building a new roof or a new deck or something, a pool. But you can use your money and use it in your business. I've used family money. My dad has allowed me to treat him as a family bank before, where I said, Dad, I need to borrow a little bit of my inheritance and I'm going to pay it back. He's like, yeah, that's fine. Give me a little bit of interest. And, we work out a little side deal with me and my dad. I've also used my own agency revenues
Mm-hmm.
to, of course, fund the purchase of buying agencies. So I can take, a portion of my profits and just reinvest it in buying other agencies. That's the easiest thing. The hardest thing is to go into a money lender.
Right.
The first place you'd want to be is with your own personal banker, because your personal banker should know your business. If he or she does not understand how you make money, you have failed in the relationship. So you need to be taking your personal banker out to lunch. You need to be going over P&Ls
Mhm.
of your
Good point.
business with them, so that when you walk in and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying another little agency. I'm
You have
making
that
$1 million a
credibility.
year here, but I want to add another 100,000." They understand the language,
Mm-hmm.
but often they'll start out saying, "Look, Keith, we don't really care about, you're not doing a big purchase here. It's 100,000, 150. Why don't we just open you up a capital line of credit?"
Beautiful.
Okay. It's like a home
Okay.
equity line, but it's just a capital line of credit. The thing about a
It's
capital line of credit,
revolving.
it generally has to be closed out every year.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
Okay.
like a credit card that's sort of open forever. So talk to your personal banker about that. I have a $100,000 capital line of credit that if I ever got pinched on some commission payout and I needed to keep my operations running, I could go grab money out of there. I've never had to use it for that, but it's like your insurance policy to always make sure your revenue is safe, and that
Mm-hmm.
you meet payroll, and that you don't get in trouble on anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Hopefully you're not getting all of your money from one carrier, and one carrier one month says, "Hey, we got to delay commission payments for a month." Crap
Right.
happens and you want to have that.
Right.
But the capital line of credit could just be an instant thing to say, "I'm just going to draw out $80,000 and buy this block of business."
Wow. Okay, great. And I mean, typically with a line of credit, you have to show 2 years of
Mhm.
pre-existing tax returns. So it may take a little bit of time before you can get
Oh
there.
yeah.
And then you have to show growth, right? You have to show that you're growing, that your revenue is growing before you normally get approved for something
So
like that.
don't go to get a capital line of credit in a hurry.
Okay.
That should be a normal part of your business process. Go ahead and get it and say, "Hey, maybe 6 months from now I'll use it, or 3 months." Don't
Mm-hmm.
show them that you're in any sort of desperate need of a capital line. They don't like that. They want to know, "Hey, you're a responsible business person that's asking to have this in a responsible way, to say, 'Hey, I need this money just in case,'" and they put it aside for you. They don't like it when you don't use it, because that ties up banks' reserve funds. So they want you to use it. So if you go a couple
Okay.
years and don't use your capital line, they're going to be like, "You're kind of wasting my time here. Why aren't you using this thing?" So don't just have it and not use it. You're going to want to use it. Otherwise, your banker will not be happy with you.
So use it as cash for other cash flow purposes. Whatever you need to fund your agency, use it for that ongoing. But then you have it there as a lump sum to fund a deal, which I love.
At least take out 10 or 15% of it each year and then pay it back,
Okay.
just so you show your banker you're using it.
Okay. Okay. The other big question that I've seen a lot of agents ask, I know I personally am curious, in this space, what does an average book of business go for and how is that evaluated?
Yeah, that's the
That's a loaded question, huh?
well, everybody thinks it's a $64,000 question, and what it is that should be the title of your college course. It's that, all right, here's what we're going to learn about, is how to value a business, and it is not. There are no hard and fast rules. And I'll tell you today, the reason why we're having this conversation, I think, is to dispel the belief that it's pretty easy. Just go out and pay 1.5 times the block, and it'll be integrated into your block a month later. All of that is a bunch of bunk. It has gotten harder and harder. So this last purchase
Really?
I just did, two last purchases that I've done. I'll give you some examples.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you can't value blocks on a thumbnail or a rule of thumb and just say this is the way they're valued. It doesn't work that way. Agents over time sign different contracts with different FMOs. Somebody says, "Hey, we're bringing Devoted to Georgia. Come sign up with us." And you just go sign this contract and you don't read it. You don't understand what's going on. Happens all the time. We're evaluating
Really?
two blocks, one to purchase. One we've already bought last year has been a nightmare, because United Healthcare says if you, Keith, aren't on the same level,
Level.
SVA or AGT or whatever, all these different acronyms they have, NGA. If you're not exactly on the same level, you're not
Huh.
matching up, we are not going to transfer this block to you.
Yikes.
Aetna,
Okay.
we're dealing with Aetna. Aetna's usually been a great, reliable partner. We're dealing with them on a case, and we love Aetna, they're one of our favorites of all time. And usually everything goes smooth. We're dealing with it on a case where they're not transferring a block over.
Mm,
So here's the deal. Usually on closing, you have all the clients listed out and all the carriers. You show it to the carrier, they transfer it to you. That's the way it used to be. Now, and maybe do a nice fat upfront payment to the agent you're buying from. Okay, say we're giving you 50% of the cost of this block. We're going to go ahead and pay you up front. And then you
uh-huh.
find out 90 days later, Aetna says, we got 90 days. We're going to allow the clients to decide whether they want to go over to you.
Oh no.
And also we're not going to transfer it, or maybe we will. We're not sure. It might take 120 days before you find out if that portion
Get
of the
out of
block
here.
even transfers to you. So I'm getting ready to buy a block. I'm evaluating a block right
Oh my
now where
gosh.
2/3 of the block is Aetna. There's no way in heck that I'm going to pay a big upfront chunk. I'm going to pay $1 upfront because that's called goodwill in a contract. To
Okay.
enact a contract, you at least have to have $1 of consideration, goodwill. So we're going to do $1, and then we'll say when the Aetna block transfers over, we're going to give you another 50% of value or whatever. We're going to pay you a big chunk of money. But unfortunately, they will not tell us
When?
today, tomorrow, when we show it, they won't tell us for 90 or maybe 120 days.
Wow.
And United Healthcare, if you don't before the block is if you don't confirm where everybody's levels are, you better not include that in your purchase price because you've got to confirm the level differences. And I
Mm,
could go on for hours about all of these traps. And agents out there are like, oh, I'm just gonna, my friend Bob died, so I'm just gonna give his wife his block's 100,000. I'm gonna give his wife $120,000, and we're gonna be good.
yikes.
You do that you better not
It's a
do
bad
that.
deal.
You better
Yeah.
not do
Because
that.
then, because now you're in the hole for sometimes several months. And is there a chance that if the clients say they don't want to move, that it never moves? Or are you saying that that isn't a
Yeah,
thing
that would be a
anymore?
rare thing. It's just such a little niggling, bureaucratic irritant that really do people
Wow.
really, really going to fight that? We've never had a problem with that, but they say, we're giving the client the choice. They don't have to go over to you. And no,
Wow.
you have to send a letter to every client. You say, hey, Bob writes this letter for you. Hey, I'm selling my agency to Keith. He's great. I know all of his staff. He's going to take great care of you. And and you just send it out. It's like in your stock, when you invest in different stocks, they send you out a proxy voting ballot. How many people actually proxy vote?
Yeah. Right. Right. But it's just, it's part of the process. You got to
Part of the
follow the
process.
process.
Part of the
That's
process.
really interesting. I made a note here so I wouldn't forget, going back really quickly to the funding. It sounds like you've done a couple of deals where there's been some buyer financing. I'm sorry, seller financing. Tell us, is that something that, I mean, it's especially knowing this situation, there should be a delay in money being transferred anyway because of the issue of policies moving. But are
Yeah,
there a lot
more
of,
today than 5 years ago. More today, you need to put in delays on paying the money.
okay. And I mean, owner financing is something that is an option for, let's say you only get funding for 50% of the deal. You could owner finance the rest. I mean, assuming the seller's okay with it. Any words of wisdom or advice on that?
Yeah, so let's go over sort of. I teach a class on this where it's, um, you know, let's say there's different exits. Sometimes people die. Sometimes they're just retiring. So let's say a person dies. The
Hmm.
family doesn't want to generally be in business with Keith for the next 3 years, right? They just want dad's money. Just give us his money. We're selling the house. We're selling the car. We just want to be done. We want to clear out his estate, right?
Right.
But generally, a family just wants the money up front. That's a whole different deal, and you'll discount that down because of the risk you're taking. You'll say, all right, we're going to give you 100% up front. Maybe it's going to be in two payments. Maybe it's going to be 100% on the closing, and then 4 months later, once we confirm the rest of it, we're going to give you the rest of it. So it's not in business very long, but maybe it's 4 months. So let's take that one off the table. Let's just talk about somebody selling a business because they're retiring or they want to do something else. They want to
Hmm.
focus on their financial planning or PNC or something else. So they're selling off a block of Medicare and health. Okay. I know people that'll just only pay out payments to buyers. Buyers generally want money up front, and so a bird in hand is better than two in the bush. So it
Hmm.
ends up being a marriage of the two where you give a portion of the money up front and then maybe a legitimate tax reason is you spread out to be three payments and maybe that puts you in three different tax years.
Mm,
So maybe
okay.
you do a payment on December 31st of one year and you do another payment on middle of the year, August or something, and you do the next payment on maybe March after we do after AEP is over and OEP and some of the changes and everything fleshes out. Maybe March 1st or April 1st, you do the final payment. Well, that's actually three tax years. It might be 2024, 25, and 26. Well, that's good to keep
Hmm.
you under
It
different,
is.
it helps spread out the tax burden, but it's really good for the seller because the seller, gets long-term capital gains treatment under
Right.
500,000. It's only 15%. That's way better than ordinary income.
Right.
So you
True.
want to enjoy that, and you also don't want to have to cough up a huge amount of money in one year if you don't have to.
But see, that's a good point. Not only is it a good idea, probably a necessary thing for most buyers, but it actually benefits the seller too. Like you said, capital gains, if you can avoid that large 20% deal all up front, it's a win-win for both
Well, you're
parties.
not going to pay 20% until it exceeds right at around 500,000. So
Right.
if you have a $700,000 purchase, the first 500 will be at 15%, the next 200 would be at 20%.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I love it. Okay. When you're looking at a book, Keith, what makes it valuable in your eyes?
Well, it goes down. The first thing we look at is the style of the business. Are these leads being generated through referrals, through nice, good referral partners like financial planners and property casualty agents, group health agents? Do you have a good, solid reputation where you're receiving referred business, or are you building your entire business on live inbound leads from services, or you're buying direct mail or something like that? The quality of the lead determines the persistency. We all know this. A direct
Mhm.
mail lead is not going to be as persistent as a referred lead. And the rule is a referred client is 70% more likely to refer you another client.
Right.
So
That's true.
the stickiness is huge. So we first look at the quality of the business structure, which on the marketing side. Then we look at the quality of the business structure on the operation side. Do they actually audit their commissions? Do they compare their book of business to their commission reports? So I have a
Hmm.
current one that this other one, this client that we just bought, about 20% of her Humana block that she thought she had, and she showed us, weren't clients of hers anymore.
Oh no.
So
Yep.
yeah, and 20% is a big number, right?
Of course.
And that happens a lot. So if people aren't regularly auditing their database, their book of business versus their commissions. So there's three things. You got your database at your computer, then you have the book of business report, and you got the commissions report. You have to
Mhm.
mesh all three of those together, and a lot of agents don't.
That's so true. Otherwise, there's no certainty behind any of the numbers. I mean, you have to.
I'll have people that I think are really good business people that are friends of mine and say, Keith, I want to sell you my block. And I'll find out, man, you're successful despite yourself because you don't have any clue of how many sheep you got in your flock. You're a horrible shepherd. A bunch of your sheep are falling off
Right.
the cliff. You don't know
And
where
you
they
have no
are.
earthly clue.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's dangerous. That is dangerous. And honestly, as a newer agent on the Medicare in the Medicare space, I'm noticing it's not an easy task auditing your book. I come from the PNC space and we have reports at our fingertips, right? We hit a button and I can see what my book of business looks like and my with farmers or whatever outside carriers, what depending on no matter who you're with, you've got a button and those reports are usually pretty easy to run.
Well, let me,
It
let me,
doesn't
let me,
seem to be
let me
that
give an
easy.
example, Brooke.
Uh-huh.
We are June 1st going to a new FMO because our current FMO, which is a giant one out of Omaha, Nebraska,
Mm-hmm.
would give us bonus dollars and we would go audit the bonus dollars and say, guys, you're missing half of my bonus dollars. They're like, no, no, Keith, this is what you sold with Humana and Aetna with us. And we're like, no. And we send them back a report from the Humana website and the Aetna website that says, here's what we wrote. Their own internal report was always in favor of them screwing us out of bonus dollars. And I'm like,
Wow.
why can't you guys push a button and see exactly what we see on our agency login, agent logins? Oh, I don't know why that doesn't match up. I'm like, God, conveniently, it's always in your favor, isn't it?
Huh.
Every single time. So don't trust your
Interesting.
FMO. But we are moving to a new FMO where actually it looks like it's going to be a push of a button. It's an
Really?
FMO. It's an
Okay.
FMO out of Manhattan. I'm not going to say their name. It starts with S and ends with K, and it's kind of electrical. We're moving to them, okay,
Okay.
because they're actually going to give us that real-time business intelligence that a lot of FMOs don't give to people.
Yes, yes. Now, just on the Medicare side, right? Just on the Medicare side, I doubt there's a FMO out there that has a way to have it with a push of a button, be able to give you ancillary and ACA data, right? That still makes it difficult. So,
Right. This FMO we're going to is just integrating ACA stuff on October 1st, but
oh, really?
they
Okay.
promise within a year that it will be part of the business intelligence.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's helpful. That's very helpful. Okay. Let's head this direction. What has been the most challenging acquisition and why? Actually, how did you overcome it
Well,
specifically?
that's part of this. I think we want to finish the question about the evaluation process, which leads to the challenging acquisition problem
Okay,
because
please.
the evaluation we would first
You're
talk
right. We didn't
about.
finish that.
Yeah, we talked
Yeah.
about the marketing angle and the operations angle, but then how do you actually evaluate product lines,
Uh-huh.
right? And so it becomes very challenging when somebody says, well, I got this great block of Medicare supplements. I've always made $100,000 a year. And we go analyze it and find out, yeah, it's a pretty good block. But in 2 years, it's actually going to be a crap block because you're not writing enough new ones. Everybody's getting ready to hit their seventh year. And the commissions
Mm,
goes from 20 or 22% down to 2%.
yep.
And I've
Okay.
had to turn down blocks and tell them their baby is ugly and say, look, I know you've always made 100 grand a year because you've been writing enough business to replace this drop off because Medicare supplement blocks implode. They're designed to
After the
implode.
seventh.
They're not wonderful. If you have a system, a really good system of selling med subs, and you got this churning system, man, buy it all day long. But most agents are just out there writing med subs. And if you
Uh-huh.
get off track and don't write 20% replacement, so if you
Okay.
have 500 med subs, you got to write at least 100 a year to replace the commission value because of death and the seventh year drop off. The seventh year drop off means about 15% of your revenues are going to go away on the seventh of the whole block on every year, 15%
Mm-hmm.
gone. So, and then you're going to have 5% that die. Okay. So you need
Right.
to write 20% of a med sub block. You got 1,000 block, you better be writing 200 a year just to tread water,
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
just to tread water, not to show growth. So when somebody tells me I've always made 150 grand a year off my block, I know they're treading water.
Right.
All they're doing
Right.
is writing enough to replace
To
it.
replace.
So,
Okay.
so is it really that good of a block? No. Medicare Advantage is different because it's lifetime commissions. When you move them from Humana to Aetna to Anthem, you get the 320 or whatever, $330 of renewal commissions.
And it's the same. It doesn't decrease over time.
Right.
The value's
Although I
still
had a
there.
guy in Cincinnati try to sell me a block one time. He sent me his 1099s from all the carriers. And I said, oh, that's really good. That's like 2020 numbers. Show me your 2021 1099s. And he wouldn't get back to me because what he had done was he had done a huge push to sell a bunch of Advantage. He sold like 1,000 of them with this big advertising push that was all first year commissions on the 1099. And I said, I want to see your renewals. And he wouldn't respond back to me because he knew I knew the right question to ask. He was trying to sell his business
Mm.
based on that first
The
year,
new business.
new to
Right.
Medicare um, bump. And he realized I was smarter than the average bear, and I was asking him the right questions. Wouldn't get back to me.
Huh.
So you have
Okay.
to be very careful. Evaluate everything as renewal on Medicare Advantage, but then you have to go down and say, again, are these middle class and upper class clients, or are they lower income or D-SNP?
Okay.
You're going to
Okay.
have different persistency levels there. And if somebody says, yeah, I'm the king of D-SNP, well, bully for you. I don't want anything to do with your block to buy it because it's too hard to manage. They bounce around too much. They're not
Yes.
persistent and they're high service. They call you all the time for service. So no, I don't want to buy a bunch of D-SNPs.
You want a good sprinkle of business. Now, one thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about buying a heavy med set book is the potential to move them to Medicare Advantage when the time's right. I mean, that's a whole new to Medicare Advantage bonus the agency would get. So it's an additional cash flow potential.
Yes.
But that's not a good way to look at it. You really just
Well,
need a good
I,
mix.
I I would have said no 2 years ago, but now we're seeing the 20% national rate increases. I think
Hmm.
the pressure on the dam is building where I think there's going to be a release where a bunch of people that were always med sup are just going to say, I can't, I'm relenting. I can't take this anymore. $300 for my med sup, and my friends are getting $3,000 of hearing and vision and other stuff. I'm
Right,
going to go
right,
try Advantage out. I
right.
think the dam is starting to break. I think we're
Yeah,
seeing cracks in the dam right now. So yes, you're right. I think there is a risk adjustment there that you can do. I wouldn't necessarily put that in a business agreement. That's as a business intelligence on your side to say,
hmm
if you want to factor in, hey, I think I can turn 20% of these subs into Advantage. Good for you. Build that into your model. We don't do that yet.
right.
I can see that's a legitimate deal. But there's also a whole thing about rewriting med subs. So every sup we have on the books, when it
True.
hits the seventh year, we're calling them to try to rewrite them and start them on
Okay.
commissions again.
Yeah, that's true.
And a
Okay.
bunch of people can't move.
Yeah, because
But
of
I
the
found,
medical.
like in Missouri, I had a guy that had a kidney transplant, and Missouri just put in their birthday rule. And I found out one of the carriers will pay me full commission on a birthday rule, and I moved him over to a new plan, cut his premiums in half. And
Hmm,
he's like, "Dang," because I thought I was uninsurable because he just got a new kidney. And
right.
I said, "You in Georgia, you're uninsurable, but in Missouri, boom, I got you."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, then, so it comes to evaluating, if we're looking at an actual multiple, it really, yeah, that makes it a difficult conversation because now we're looking at a bunch of different blocks and different values here and there.
So you're gonna value each block. The Med Sup block you're gonna
Okay.
value, the ACA block you're gonna value, the Medicare Advantage block on your spreadsheet. You're gonna be attaching values anywhere from one to at the very high end is 3x. It'd have to be
Okay.
the most pure, very, very good block to get anywhere near 3x. The generally you're looking at 1.5 to 2
Okay.
for a well-run business. For a poorly run business where an agent dies, it's very common to pay 1x.
Okay. Well, and that's 1x to 3x off of EBITDA or
No,
just annual revenue.
good questions. That's our next thing here is that that's on gross revenue. The only
Okay.
time you start talking about EBITDA is when you're starting to talk about large agencies that actually have employees. Like I've got 10 employees, my valuation, yeah, you might be looking at 10 to 12x on my agency on my EBITDA. So if
Okay.
I have $1 million of EBITDA, then you would do that. Even though my gross revenues might be way higher than that. You don't do that on a block where somebody's got $200,000 and it's just, somebody working out of the trunk of their car or their bedroom or their garage, or maybe they have a little rented office space. It's almost all owner take,
Okay.
right? They might spend 10 grand a year on advertising and they might get
Uh-huh.
some co-op from some carriers, but basically it's a one-man band. You use gross revenue. You're not going to do the marketing they did. You're going to integrate their revenue into your
Right.
marketing.
That's
You're
right.
going to into your model. It's a
Different
cute, it's a
expenses all
it's a it's
around.
a cute little cottage business that you have, Grandma. They're in Asheville, North Carolina, and you're Mrs. Medicare down the street, but it ain't worth that much, okay?
Right.
Because you don't have a mature business.
Got it. Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, and then the question we were going to before I realized I hadn't really completed that thought was the most challenging acquisition you've had and how you overcame it.
Yeah, so the first one was where we learned the most. So the first acquisition, when we were first just green as can be, this is back in 2013 or 14. A friend of mine, the husband that got divorced, the husband actually had been bonding PNC policies and not sending in the payment. He got in trouble, went to
Oh,
jail.
no.
She had to sell her the business to me, so we put in some stop gaps in there because we didn't know a few things. Well, one of the things we didn't know is there was a tax lien from
Oh,
the
gosh.
IRS, and the IRS was garnishing some of her Humana commissions and some of her other commissions. Okay, and
Yikes.
we luckily had built in that we were going to give her 3 payments. Well, the third payment never happened because all that stuff had been garnished by the IRS.
Mm,
So it was very challenging. The second purchase we made, as a friend of mine, didn't tell me that he had a poison employee that thought the employee thought or had been promised he was going to get that business. Well, he illegally copied all the database and everything. So we actually have a
oh,
clause
no.
in our contracts now about poison employees. You have to tell us, do you have any disgruntled employees? Do you have anybody that you're worried about? Well, this guy, my friend, should have told me the guy had changed all the passwords, locked him out of
Mm-hmm.
the telephone system. I mean, it was nasty. And
Wow.
my friend did not tell me these things.
Yikes. And that was a
We
friend.
figured
So
it
you
all
gotta,
out.
yeah.
And the guy literally had done huge HIPAA violations. The guy should have gone to jail, the employee, but it's just a nasty little office dispute. But you can't
Hmm.
copy a database with 3,000 people in it and just think that that's okay. That's highly illegal.
Yes. Right.
So
Wow.
now the last one. Now the reason why I can't say any one is worse than the other one is that the dynamic of the market keeps changing, and carriers now, especially in ACA, are getting very, very hard to transfer clients over. Like on the
Okay.
ACA, it's almost one by one by one, you have to transfer them over. You can't do a blanket transfer.
Oh
Under
no.
the Medicare, you can
Right.
if all the other elements are right. Um,
Huh.
and it has gotten very sticky. There's no industry standard. United Healthcare will do something different than Aetna or Humana or Anthem. Um, and
Jeez,
you would
Louise,
think,
man, that's a
you would think,
problem. One at a
hold on, you would
time.
think, if I know an 800-pound gorilla, some FMO is going to call in and ask a favor and it's going to fix this, it doesn't happen anymore.
Wow. Okay.
If it doesn't match up on the rules, the FMO
It
can't
doesn't.
even bend the rules for you.
Wow.
But that's been our experience.
Yeah. And speaking of FMOs, one of the questions that I saw in the chat before we hopped on the call was, "Hey, find out if when you have is find out if when you buy a book of business, you have to share the same FMO." I'm assuming that doesn't matter at all. It's all direct to it's all carrier related information and data.
It,
So,
it's gonna be easier if you're in the same FMO, but you don't have to now. We buy blocks
okay.
all the time where we have to do it. The problem is a lot of agents think they own their block of business. So this one of these last ones that I purchased, the lady's like, "Well, I own these other 12 policies with this carrier." We
Uh-huh.
find out no, that the FMO, her friend that had signed her contracts with her, made her LOA, and that other person actually owned those 12 policies. She
Oh
didn't own them. She's
no.
like, oh, shoot. I got another guy we're evaluating right now, and now he knows we've already checked it. He's got like 50 policies that he doesn't own that somebody else owns, but he's getting
Oh
the
no.
commissions, but he can't sell them. He can't sell the
Because he
policy.
doesn't have the ownership right.
He doesn't have the
Wow.
ownership. Yep.
Okay. Well, some of the last few questions here would be about advice that you would give, which we've kind of gone over some really great. I mean, I have a page full of notes, but we've gone over most of this. But any advice you would give to a seller, and then, of course, any specific advice you haven't gone over yet that you would give to a buyer?
A good friend of mine, there was a guy coming around here, Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, his daddy gave him a bunch of money, and he was trying to buy agencies. And so he bought my friend for 2x her gross revenue. 6 months later, she had to sue to undo the deal. He had given her a $1.2 million check. She actually kept it in her desk drawer, never deposited it because she found out he didn't have an office manager. He did not have any admin people to service it or anything. He had been telling her all this stuff and she didn't do any due diligence. And she realized after the close, this guy is going to, all my business is going to just collapse because he actually just was some rich princeling that dad said, hey, I'm going to set my son up in business. Go out here. Here's $5 million. Go out and
And
buy
had
some
no
businesses.
intention to actually run it.
He had no idea of what it would take.
Wow.
So she sued. They undid the contract because he was a unqualified buyer. He actually was not certified to sell, was not ready to sell on everything. And so when you
Oh
go
no.
to find when a seller, if you're a seller or a buyer, you have to make sure that you're ready to sell on every single line of business that matches up perfectly.
Okay.
If they've got a carrier you're not certified with, you better go get certified and be ready to sell.
That's right. True.
Okay,
Okay.
now she had to undo that. It's been a 2 year nightmare for her. Literally, she thought she was retiring to the beach. She's still in the
Oh
business,
no.
had to work two more AEPs, been an absolute nightmare. Um,
Oh man.
the worst way you want to try to exit is create yourself this giant nightmare.
Right.
So, and it was a nightmare for other people. I'm sure that this guy bought. I haven't heard all the stories from other people, but friends of mine, he did approach and they almost sold to them. And I warned them off from the guy because they asked me, do you know this guy? And I said, and I referred them over and they found out what happened to my other friend. So you do need
Mm,
to talk to buddies. You do need to do your due diligence and actually find out that you have a legitimate buyer. Or if you're behaving as a buyer, you want to make sure you have a legitimate seller. Do they actually own their blocks? Do they actually run their business properly? Do they actually understand their contracts? So
right.
you really need to watch from a buyer and a seller standpoint There's a lot of yahoos out there. You got to be very careful. Even if it's a friend of yours, don't no. Trust but verify everything.
Good point. Yep. I mean, it's easy to jump at some money that's dangling in front of you, but golly, there's so many more roadblocks I had no idea about. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I
What else?
wouldn't, hold on, let me interrupt you. I wouldn't finance a block for 5 or 6 years. You know, like people are like, oh, we're just going to finance it, pay it out over 4 or 5 years. Do you really want to be in business with each other for 4 or 5 years? Let's
Right.
get the deal done. Let's get it done in 18 months or something. Why stretch this out so long unless it's a financing issue and it's somebody you really do trust? But in general, relationships get very pained after a while.
That's
They don't want to
true.
be in business anymore, and they think you're cheating them, or they don't understand, or they just it just becomes a headache. Try to
Yeah,
shorten that window down.
that's a good point. Very good point. Well, what else you got for us? Anything else you'd like to add before we close out?
Well, I really find it interesting on a lot of the Facebook groups when I watch people ask these questions. Like, well, just give me the simple answer.
Right.
They're asking for a shortcut. There is no shortcut in this. The shortcut is you can lose your shirt real quick if you don't know what you're doing, both as a seller and a buyer. And when you hear people say, well, that's a weird offer that somebody else got, 8 times, 8x, and I'm only getting 2x, they don't even understand the definition of EBITDA versus gross revenue.
Right. Right.
So you
Right.
got to actually understand the language because people bandy about terms all the time. And just remember, if it's a block of business, three or $400,000 or less, that's basically owner's take. It's a one-man band, or maybe you got one or two admin. It's not the same as a business that's a mature, full corporate business with you know
Establish
staff and
operations and
operations
right.
managers and true
Right.
budgets and things. So there's
Yeah.
a different
Makes sense.
species to everything, and then it even gets further defined down. You got dogs, but what breed of dog are you? Let's find out on Medicare Advantage, Medicare Supplement, ACA. How are you actually developing your clients? How are you servicing your clients? What is your culture?
Right.
What are your ethics?
Right.
Are
Right.
you a set it and forget it agent, or are you an agent that uh,
Follows through.
preaches, let's do annual reviews, let's make sure
Right.
the clients are taken care of? Do you provide other services? Like, we don't do drug reviews anymore. We used to always do drug reviews. We don't do them now. We send them a video, we send them a flyer. Here's how you create your Medicare account. Here's how you do your drug review for our Med Sub clients. Now, for our Medicare Advantage clients, we're going to do that all day long.
Right.
But we had to change our culture to say, hey, it's pretty easy now and we're okay about giving up the revenue. But when somebody's brand new to us, we're going to write a drug plan when they first come in, but then we're going to teach them, you're going to do this DIY yourself from now on.
Hmm.
You need to find out. I have a lot of agents out there that just all they do is write med subs, and they've always told people to go to the Medicare website, and they're just set it and forget it. They're like, I don't
Huh.
provide service because I'm selling people med subs. I'm like, well, you're really, really wrong because you're losing out on referrals, you're
Yeah.
losing out on goodwill, you're losing out on the chance to rewrite these people. Why are you
Cross
ignoring your
sells.
clients?
Right, right. Absolutely. No, that's a good point. So I've heard evaluate each book of business, each block of business completely needs to be looked at independently. The audit has to happen first, of course. Then you're going to look at other things like the persistency and lead sources. I heard you say that earlier. How are agents getting the business themselves? Is it all
Mhm.
referral based or is it sprinkled in with leads that are purchased or inbound calls? And then I also heard you say check for tax liens. I wrote that down. That's an interesting thought, something I would have never thought about and could have
Yep.
been screwed over easily, not knowing that. It's not an easy calculation. 1 to 3 times gross revenue is a normal, maybe a higher multiple on EBITDA, but every business is going to be run differently. That's what's interesting to me. It makes more sense that you would look at gross revenue and not EBITDA because expenses are going to look different based on the business owner running it. So to me,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And this has been great. Hey, tell us the course that you're running and how we can
Well, so
get
I,
more
you know, I
information
so
about it.
I used to teach it on a regular basis. I taught it to a Las Vegas convention this year, but it's just basically on two things. One is um, succession planning. So succession planning is how do you prepare your agency in case you get hit by the fruit truck today so that your family can sell it and it's sellable.
Hmm.
Or how can you just exit out because you want to build it up to sell it and exit out and retire? That's
Right.
that's one thing that I've taught many times over the last 12 years.
Okay.
I only taught it once or twice this year on invitation, and I'm happy to do that for you if you ever want to do that. But the other part of that is teaching commissions versus persistency. It's another subclass of that to say to understand that the difference between 80% persistency and 90% persistency is a 50% difference in income over 10 years. So you if you were going to make
That's
$1 million
true.
at 80%, you're going to make 1,500,000 at 90%.
That's
It
right.
is a compounding effect, and agents do not pay attention to their persistency. All they worry about is sales and rewriting, and they don't actually look at how am I actually keeping 90% of my clients. The target should be 90% plus.
Okay.
You're not going to keep them all because
Right.
people die and they move, they get Medicaid, they have strokes, the kids take over. You lose clients naturally. And I always laugh when clients tell me, agents tell me, oh, I keep all my clients. You're a fool. Nobody keeps all their
Death is a part of that. So,
clients. That's right.
yeah. Well, that's great. Really good stuff. And so there's not really a course that you have online that's been that's available for people to kind of just purchase into. They're
Well,
individual in
last
person.
summer I did a 6 week course, broke that out into 6 classes for Joanna Wickoff of Top Flight Insurance and her Medicare Mentors Media. So I'll
Okay.
give her a shout out to that because she actually plugged it in there. She has it housed there. We did a 6 week course on evaluations, on this persistency, on all of these things. There's six 1 hour sessions or 45 minutes to an hour. And
Okay.
that's Joanna Wickoff, Top Flight Insurance, Medicare Mentors Media.com, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'll go check it out. I didn't get a chance to introduce me at the beginning of the call. And Keith, even you don't know much about me, but I have an LOA shop in North Houston. We came from the Medicare space and I'm sorry, the PNC space, and thought, you know what, this is going to be easy. You just kind of plug and play, right? It is not, and Medicare is a monster. It really
Yes.
is, and it's taken us a good year to understand what the heck we're even doing. So this has been great to learn. We are a big believer in putting in good process and for operations to run smoothly. I know that if in order to achieve a desired result, you have to have process. No matter how big you want to be or how small you want to be, for you to be able to be successful and sell this thing off at the end of the day when you're ready to retire, if process isn't in place, you'll have a mess at the end of the day. And so I'm a big believer in that. I also have learned from the PNC side, because we do build those scratch and sell them off, is that if you don't build it from the beginning to exit, then you're making a big mistake. And so knowing this stuff, even if I'm only a year in and I plan on keeping this thing for 15 years, knowing what I know now from this conversation is something I can build into my operations day in and day out. And so I think that's really good stuff. And I so appreciate your knowledge and your expertise and information on the matter.
I'm
It's
glad to
been
help
great.
out. And, people can contact me if they have questions, or they can
Okay.
send them through you. But there's only one Keith Nab in the United States that does Medicare. The other one's a really smart, other Keith Nab in America is a really smart math professor. Luckily,
Okay.
luckily he's not a known criminal or anything, but it's pretty easy
The
to find Keith.
confusion.
It's pretty
Yeah.
easy to find Keith Nab. I'm the only one. So
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
thanks, Beth.
And thank you. And Keith, I'll obviously edit this just a tad and get rid of some of the dead space. But what first time doing this, if I'm being honest, and I just know that there's a ton of information that's not clear. Like you said, that post yesterday, I saw you commented on the post for Medicare Monsters, where the guy was like, it was an anonymous thing. Hey, what do I have to do to sell my book, or how much is a book worth? And you should see, I mean, I don't know if you saw the other answers.
I did.
They're all over the place. It's not a formula.
Yeah.
You just have to be smart. And so that's why with you having the experience you have in this, you came up with kind of your own individual formula, and it's per block of business. And that's the way it has to be looked at.
On that post, let's say there's 10 comments. I bet there's only Jason Denniston, Justin Stark, me. There's probably only 3 out of the 10 that actually have bought a block, probably.
That know what
Well, what these other people are saying is what they've heard. Oh,
Right.
I've heard blocks go from one and a half to three times. I mean, they're just parroting some other post they saw somewhere else. They've never actually participated in a purchase or an evaluation.
Yeah, lots of misinformation. So I think this is good. I don't know how fast the group will grow, but I'm inviting people daily, and I hope that it grows to a large size because we have it on the PNC side. I'm a part of a farmers agency, book a business for sale. We own farmers agencies, and there's like I think 4,500 in this one group. And Keith, every day there's someone posting about in different parts of the United States. And so I love to get to a point where we have a space for that. So every day there could be deals happening and information, not just deals, but information. The other group doesn't have this. And lack of information, you sell book for a multiple that's not necessary. And so the buyer's screwed out of something, or you sell it for too little and you get nothing as a seller. So